often respond with protests and sometimes with violence, though most just want normal lives.
You want to live with the Israelis in peace?
Welcome back to more of me watching online propaganda so you don't have to. This time I'm watching Vox, and I really hoped it was gonna be balanced and boring and the entire video was just gonna be, yeah, that's pretty fair. But no, it didn't do any of that. So let's watch another online propaganda to see why you care so much about this conflict in particular. So let's take a look.
One of the biggest myths about the Israel-Palestine conflict is that it's been going on for centuries, all about ancient religious hatreds. In fact, while religion is involved, conflict's mostly about two groups of people who claim the same land.
Really? So this has nothing to do with religion and not how Hamas told our hostages that they will spare them if they will convert to Islam and they were taught to memorize Quran passages? Nothing to do with religion, just land.
It was religiously diverse, including mostly Muslims and Christians, also a small number of Jews who lived generally in peace.
Yeah, everyone knows that before the Zionists, the Middle East was peaceful.
More people in the region were developing a sense of being not just ethnic Arabs, but Palestinians, a distinct national identity.
Palestinian identity as Arabs was made up.
Called Zionism, which said that Judaism was not just a religion, but a nationality, one that deserved a nation of its own. And after centuries of persecution, many believed a Jewish state was their only way of safety and saw their historic homeland in the Middle East as the best hope. In the first decades of the 20th century, tens of thousands of European Jews moved there.
Not what Zionism is. And before the actual political movement was established or formalized, it existed and Jews always yearned to go back to Israel and live as Jews in Israel. But no, Zionism in Europe was just where it was first established because that was also the first place the Jews first had political power, which is what I'm guessing this is trying to demonize. And let's just compare how Jews went on about getting their state versus how Palestinians go about getting their state. Jews decided to go the path of diplomacy. We established this political movement. Palestinians are still thinking that they should be killing all Jews.
The British taking control of a region it called the British Mandate for Palestine. First, the British allowed Jewish immigration, but as more Jews arrived...
So they're just completely ignoring Jordan. Look at British Mandate. The majority of the British Mandate is actually Jordan. But for some reason, you don't seem to really care to free Palestine from Jordan.
But as more Jews arrived, settling into farming communities, tension between Jews and Arabs grew. Both sides committed acts of violence, and by the 1930s, the British began limiting Jewish immigration.
We're comparing apples to oranges here.
In response, Jewish militias formed to fight both the local Arabs and to resist British rule. Then came the Holocaust, leading many more Jews to flee Europe for British Palestine and galvanizing much of the world in support of a Jewish state. The United Nations approved a plan to divide British Palestine into two separate states, one for Jews, Israel, and one for Arabs, Palestine. The city of Jerusalem was to become a special international zone. The plan was meant to give Jews a state, to establish Palestinian independence, and to end the sectarian violence that the British could no longer control. The Jews accepted the plan, and they declared independence as Israel. But Arabs throughout the region saw the UN plan as just more European colonialism trying to steal their land. Many of the Arab states, who had just recently won independence themselves, declared war on Israel in an effort to establish a unified Arab Palestine. Where all of British Palestine had been.
See, this is why it's important. If Israel never existed, neither would Palestine. This is about establishing the caliphate. But that's what we're trying to tell you. We always wanted peace. They never wanted it.
The new state of Israel won the war. But in the process, they pushed well past their borders under the UN plan, taking the western half of Jerusalem and much of the land that was to have been part of Palestine, creating a massive refugee population whose descendants today number about 7 million.
And they are now at about 7 million. And how long is the genocide? Wow, we are so bad at genocide. It's this kind of theme where they start wars, they lose, they complain. And then you go and reward them for complaining.
And the West Bank, named because it's west of the Jordan River, which Jordan controlled. This was the beginning of the decades-long...
See why it's called West Bank? Because it was controlled by Jordan. West of what?
Then something happened that transformed the conflict. In 1967, Israel and the neighboring Arab states fought another war. Israel had seized the Golan Heights from Syria, the West Bank from Jordan, and both Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. In 1978, Israel and Egypt signed the...
Whoa. He just went so fast into this. Not only did we win, we got all this land too. And now watch what we did. We got all this land and then what we did with it.
U.S. brokered Camp David Accords, Shortly after that, Israel gave Sinai back to Egypt as part of the peace treaty. At the time, this was hugely controversial in the Arab world. Egyptian President Anwar Sadat was assassinated in part because of outrage against it.
And that's also why they hated him. Because notice how it broke the illusion. Israel always wanted peace. Always. Peace with Jews in the Middle East is a bad word.
Which had formed in the 1960s to seek a Palestinian state, fought against Israel, including through acts of terrorism. As all of this was happening, something dramatic was changing in the Israel-occupied Palestinian territory.
See, they said they would, but that's not what happened in practice. They're saying that Israel invaded Lebanon as if Palestinians had nothing to do with it. Why did Israel have to invade Lebanon? Is it maybe because the Palestinians were accepted there as refugees started a civil war?
Is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, not only to stand within its gates, but also to build the home of your dreams there.
Settlers are followed by soldiers to guard them, and the growing settlements forced Palestinians off of their land.
He doesn't seem to mention in this video at all what was the name of West Bank before it was annexed to Jordan. How is the indigenous Palestinian West Bank in the east of Palestine?
They make it much more difficult for the Palestinians to ever have an independent state. Today, there are several...
Do you know what they'll be doing with that state if they had it? Do you want another Islamic Republic proxy? Because everyone living in Islamic states is just having such a great time in the Middle East.
Exploded into the Intifada. Which is the Arabic word for uprising.
Violent uprising. It's the
What does
Arabic word for
Intifada mean?
violent uprising.
It soon became violent.
No. What type of violence? What type of violence precisely were they using is a little bit important to mention.
The Oslo Accords established the Palestinian Authority, allowing Palestinians a little bit of freedom to govern themselves in certain areas. Hardliners on both sides opposed the Oslo Accords. Members of Hamas launched suicide bombings to try to sabotage the process.
We accepted it. Even our hardcore opponents in Israel were not blowing themselves up in protest.
Not long after Rabin signs the second round of Oslo Accords, a far-right Israeli shoots him to death in Tel Aviv.
Yeah, okay, that is also fair. But in contrast, look at what Israel did after that matters. Now we have a Memorial Day, and every year we are reminded of the horrific violence that occurred, and we are reminded of what political violence can lead to.
Both sides can use violence to derail peace, keep a permanent conflict going as they seek the other side's total destruction.
Not the same when Hamas still executes political opponents in broad daylight, and Hamas Piker calls it field justice, I guess. But
Like Khomeini tweet when he responsible for killing so many people. Listen, sometimes you can find poetry in the strangest places.
so you're not really being fair with that comparison here, are you?
This one much more violent than the first. By the time it wound down a few years later...
Again, quoting B'Tselem and completely ignoring the number of suicide bombing, these are some of the worst years of my life. And I was 6 years old here.
Israelis become much more skeptical that Palestinians will ever accept peace or that it's even worth trying.
Once we realized that we were just living next to a different flavor of ISIS, yes.
They're not really trying to solve the conflict anymore, just to manage it.
At this point, we just were like, okay, we give up. We're just gonna stay alive.
That year, Israel withdraws from Gaza. Hamas gains power, but splits from the Palestinian Authority in a short civil war.
That is very generous. We gave up land again. We were like, that's it. We're done with you. We don't want anything to do with this mess. And they chose to build all these terror tunnels and build their master plan to go and slaughter us like it's the 7th century.
More and more settlements are smothering Palestinians, often respond with protests and sometimes with violence. The most just want normal lives.
You want to live with the Israelis in peace?
I want one state solution. No Israel.
So no more Israel?
Yes.
Israel wiped off the map?
Palestine فقط.
We should delete Israel.
So you would not be okay with a two-state solution?
Of course not.
In Gaza, Hamas and other violent groups have periodic wars with Israel. The fighting overwhelmingly kills Palestinians.
Anyone that has these green garbs in their funeral is Hamas. You are mourning the actual terrorists that are taught to blow themselves up for Gaza. See, this is the Hezbollah terrorists right here. So Hezbollah, Hamas, see that little garb? These are the actual terrorists that believe in martyrdom and 72 virgins and all that jazz. Yes, they're nothing like the Muslims you live to next door yet.
Whatever comes next will be much worse.
Well, that was October 7, so when was this video? 10 years ago. Wow. And that's about when I realized that my ISIS neighbors don't want the same thing, and I was like, that's it. I'm off to Canada, where I have reasonable people that don't support terrorism, or so I thought. So yeah, here I am watching videos in Canada of the terrorists I escaped from, all while trying to explain to you why they're terrorists. And I guess, yeah, subscribe for more.